We give a hand to the leadership here. As you know, Dean, the movement to establish this chair was led by one of your own faculty, the late Dr. Ed Azar. And he did this partly in response to a document written by the world governing body of the Baha'i faith, the Universal House of Justice. That open letter to the peoples of the world, entitled The Promise of World Peace, expressed the profound sentiment of the Baha'i community for the need for a surge of collaboration and dedication among the peoples and institutions of the world to address the myriad of problems that face humanity. The Promise of World Peace addressed many of these challenges specifically, such as the need for the elimination of prejudices of all kinds, proper custodianship of the environment, the equitable sharing of global resources, the advancement of women, universal access to education, and other matters pertaining to the establishment of a peaceful and just social order. But more fundamental than those principles was an appeal to people of goodwill everywhere and to the nations of the world to engage in serious consultation on these matters and to find practical solutions based on universal ethical principles. While clear-eyed and realistic in its assessment of the problems of the world, the overarching sentiment was one of hope for humanity's future, a hope shared not only by all Baha'is, but also by countless other individuals and institutions who are devoted to this high calling. And there's no doubt, ladies and gentlemen, that the University of Maryland is among these institutions. The Baha'i Chair for World Peace was welcomed by the leadership of this university, and thus was born a partnership that has been greeted by the members of the Baha'i faith the world over with great enthusiasm. Among the reasons for it is our belief that the university is situated at the meeting point of a host of circumstances that should permit it to play a leading role in that surge of effort that is so necessary for world peace. These include, first and foremost, the university's status as one of the outstanding research institutions of the United States, but also its location at the crossroads of the people of the world as exemplified by the incredibly rich and diverse population of all classes, races, and cultures that are a part of the greater Washington, D.C. area. It seems eminently appropriate that representatives of that diversity should have been invited by the university here to engage in reflection on how to create a dynamic relationship between this institution and the population within which it is situated. And it's especially fitting, too, that the subject of tonight's dialogue is precisely how people can engage in diplomatic efforts that are the heartbeat of our national capital, and that the dialogue has been structured in such a way as to allow that to happen tonight. Dr. John Grazel, the current holder of the Baha'i Chair for World Peace and the moderator of tonight's discussion, will explain our agenda this evening in greater detail. So I have, friends, the honor to welcome you to the Chair's first annual dialogue. The dialogue is now open, and I'm pleased to turn it over to you, Dr. Grazel. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ken. To begin with, first of all, I would like to apologize to everyone. You are running a bit late. I hope you will take a somewhat South American attitude. And realize that we don't have to be the slaves to time, but time can be our nursemaid to greater thoughts. Before we start, I do want to say that this dialogue, and even its theme, of course, only exists because of the tremendous support and efforts of many people we don't have time to recognize. I do want to make two recognitions that I find. First of all, the Baha'i Chair for World Peace and its activities only prospers because the School of Social and Behavioral Sciences, under the guidance of Dean Montgomery and the tremendous nurturing of Dean Suleiman Hale, allows it to experiment, to reach out, to try to new things with new partners in new ways. And I really want to thank those individuals in the school for all it has done and continues to do to allow the chair to prosper and events like this to occur. I also want to acknowledge that this event occurs partially because of the generous support from the Muhammad Ali Faizi Memorial Fund. Mr. Faizi was, in his own right, an example of what this very dialogue is about, an individual with deep spiritual principles and dedication to humanity, who led his own life as an individual scholar and as a person in pursuit of the help to others to see the very enlightenment of the power of spirituality in life that he himself had discovered. And the Muhammad Faizi Fund, in his memory, provides significant support for this event, and I'd like to acknowledge that. I want to introduce you to our panel. We have a very distinguished panel. You know, there's a joke. Every joke's an old joke. There's a joke, some of you no doubt have heard it, some haven't. How do you make God laugh? Hell of your plans. So, I'm going to tell you the plans for the dialogue that will make God laugh. So I realize we have a distinguished panel, and they will take this dialogue where it should go. But I want to make clear that you too are part of this dialogue. It's a bit of an experiment we're trying now. You should all have pencils and papers on your table. Because we have a limited amount of time, we certainly will not be able to get the type of participation we normally have dreamed of. But what we are very serious about is we're going to ask you to, as the dialogue progresses, write down any questions that come to your mind. And if you're brave enough to put your email down, if you put your email down, we'll actually make all effort to actually respond. If you don't put your email down, we still will take those comments and questions. And time permitting, Mr. Michael Dravis, who is in the back, is going to be selecting a few that we will address to our panel. But the others we plan to cluster, and then to address those issues and to comb them for new ideas and to include them in what we hope will be a synopsis of this event and the insights that it produces. So you are the participants in terms of not only listening but actually generating the thoughts and the comments. But what we think is a challenging issue, how do we really get greater participation of people into the diplomacy of the 21st century, a century where certainly there are still nation states, but we have tremendous challenges between people within nation states, between populations in different nation states, between nation states that don't recognize each other, or one of which is a nation state and one that isn't. We're faced with challenges that really require our rethinking as to the role of people, diplomacy, and other instruments for approaching conflict and for achieving the desperate search for peace that I think probably all of us do. Just to give you an idea, though, of the power, I just want to give you one example. This is not a theoretic. It's more a case of, as you will see in dialogue, what we do and don't remember. Probably very few of you have ever heard of Virginia Gildersleeve. Have you ever heard of her? Virginia Gildersleeve was the dean at Barnard College, an academic. She was appointed as the only woman in a private party to the committee that helped write the Charter of the United Nations at the end of World War II. Now, when she looked down and when she saw Marshall Smuts, who was the leader of South Africa, wished to begin that with the phrase, "The higher contracting parties shall." It didn't exactly resonate with her, what she felt the historic moment called for. And she was the person who basically crafted and convinced people to begin the Charter of the United Nations with these words: "We, the peoples of the United Nations." So the Charter of the United Nations, which we think of as United Nations, actually begins with "We, the peoples of the United Nations." Now, since